we are heading into lucky number 7. If you have any questions about your lineup or you just want a second opinion, I'm here for you. Drop it in the comments. Let's start off today's video with accountability. We do this every single week and everything is documented. Now, last week was by far the worst week we've had on the year, 4-4, but still on the year, 34-14, 71%. I'm not perfect, but I'm pretty good. Let's kick it off here with the weekly defense. It is the New Orleans Saints. This is the team that is still on your waivers, most likely, especially in Yahoo leagues, as they're only owned at about 34%. ESPN, it's a little bit more tricky, 48%. If they're there, they need to be on your roster, and they need to be starting. They are at home. Of course, they're 2-4. They've lost 4 straight games, so it's a must-win, and they're playing the 4th best team for defenses in fantasy this year in the Denver Broncos. In the 6 games so far, the Denver Broncos offense has produced 9 turnovers, which is terrible for the offensive side of the ball. But for the New Orleans Saints defense, that's great. More fantasy production for us this upcoming week. Now, the only thing I would say as a con is maybe Sean Payton gets these boys ready to play here. I'm talking about the Broncos, as it could be viewed as a revenge game. Regardless, I think Thursday Night Football, low-scoring game. The defenses should shine in this one. We're going to start the New Orleans Saints defense. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, it's a little bit more tricky for the Saints. Again, Chris Olave is most likely going to be out this week. Even if he's not, Pat Surtain is going to be on Chris Olave if he's back in the rotation. Now, if Chris Olave is out, you can't start any of these receivers, in my opinion. Rashid Shaheed will now have the Patrick Surtain matchup if Chris Olave is out, which leads, Rashid on paper is in a wide receiver 1 role with Olave out. He's been the wide receiver 18 on the year, giving us 13 fantasy points a game, which is definitely startable. Again, it's a must-win game for the Saints. He's an explosive player, big, deep threat guy. But the problem is he is Spencer Rattler, who's a gunslinger. But at the end of the day, he's a backup quarterback against Patrick Surtain, which is the best cornerback in the game. So tough cornerback matchup. I know it's a must-win, but there's really no easy matchup for Shaheed and no favorable, matchup for Shaheed in this game. Even though they're home, I'm going to say sit Shaheed. Again, I believe it's going to be a very low-scoring affair, and I think the Broncos might even win it. Here we go. At the running back position, J.K. Dobbins. He's been the running back 14 on the year, despite the last 2 weeks he's been under 10 fantasy points. So it really goes to show you, when he has those boom weeks, they are boom weeks. But he's playing Arizona, which is the 8th best matchup this week. And it is a must-win game, I think, for both of these teams as far as their playoff lives. Now, he's on the road, I will say, against a high-powered Arizona offense. Now, if they're healthy, Marvin Harrison, if he's back in the mix, if they're healthy, they could put up 20 to 30 points, which might force the Chargers to throw the ball more than they intend to going into the week. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think the Chargers will control the game, and I think J.K. Dobbins will have one of those games, kind of like early in the year, where he gets us 15 to 20 fantasy points. And with that being said, don't be scared. I know he's had a couple down weeks. Put him in your lineup. T. Higgins. Let's move over to the Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals matchup. I have 2 different plays for you guys in this one. For T. Higgins, over the last 3 games, he's been dominant. He's looked like the old T. Higgins, as he's had 22 receptions total on 31 targets, 210 yards, which is just about 70 a game, and 2 touchdowns in a 3-game stretch. He's been the wide receiver 5 in that incredible stretch. He's been killing it, quite simply. But it's a must-win game on the road for the Bengals. I understand that the Browns have had Joe Burrow's number in his era, but I think these 2 teams are in completely different situations. The Bengals are getting hot. The Browns can't seem to get warm, if that's even on our thermostat, right? I'm a Browns fan. But for T. Higgins, he only averages about 6 to 7 fantasy points a game against the Browns in his career, and that's a big sample size. 6 games throughout his career. And here's the big thing. Over the last 2 games, and that was last year and the year before, he's had 0 fantasy points total in those 2 games. No receptions on 8 targets. T. Higgins has been on lockdown when he plays the Cleveland Browns. So again, I understand these 2 teams are on 2 different paths at the moment, but I'm going to stick on the side of history with this one. Might be risky, but we're going to sit T. Higgins as he has a tough defense ahead of him. Now, Nick Chubb, look, you drafted him, you stashed him on your IR, and you said when he comes back, he's going to save my running back room, or he's just going to put my team over the top. And hey, that's a great strategy. I did it in a couple leagues myself. Now I understand when he's fully healthy, he could arguably be a top 3 fantasy running back in the world on any given year. However, he is coming off of a serious knee injury. He's been off of football for a long time. And again, I can't see a world where Kevin Stefanski, now he's made a lot of dumb decisions, that he just automatically gives Chubb a full workload yet again. So I guess err on the side of caution. I know he's playing a subpar defense in the Cincinnati Bengals, but again, it's just I can't see a full workload or at least a fantasy relevant workload in his first week back from injury. Now, again, it's a terrible offense, terrible offensive line that can't stay healthy or really protect anybody. Deshaun Watson's bad. The play calling's bad. Everything's bad. I'm a Browns fan. Trust me. I watch this team very closely. We're going to sit Nick Chubb this week. Err on the side of caution. Now, 2 weeks down the line in week 8 and on, I think Nick Chubb is back to our starting lineups. But week 7, first week back from an injury, let's sit him. Tank Dell on the thumbnail. You knew he was going to be in today's video. There's a lot of pros for Tank Dell this upcoming week. Nico Collins is still on IR, so opens up more opportunities for Tank Dell to dominate like he did last year. It could be a potential shootout game here against the Green Bay Packers on the road. It could be a statement victory for both teams, to be quite honest. And this is a guy in Tank Dell that is coming off his best game on the year. Wide receiver 14 last week, 19 fantasy points in full PPR formats. And here's the reason why I like him so much. Is because Jaire Alexander, one of the best cornerbacks in the game, is going to be shadowing a guy like Stephon Diggs. So, again, Tank Dell will have the easier, more favorable matchups on that Green Bay defense, and I think CJ Stroud should look his way. On top of that, Green Bay is a top 10 matchup for receivers this season. Tank Dell, I think it's a start, no doubt about it. The final one that I'll give you here until, if you stay to the end, I'll give you a free one. Zach Ertz, we're going to start him at the tight end position. This is a guy that is still on your waivers. He's owned in less than 30% of leagues in Yahoo and ESPN, so he should be out there for you to grab and start if you need a guy this week. Now, for Zach Ertz, he's playing a top 5 matchup against the tight end position this week, of course, in the Carolina Panthers. Carolina has allowed at least 8 fantasy points a game to tight ends in 4 straight weeks. Again, we're talking about the starting tight ends here. Now, Zach Ertz only has 1 game under 500. So for a position like the tight end position that has been so terrible really over the last 2 years in fantasy, very inconsistent, we want to find the hot hands when we can, and we want to roll with them as much as we can until they go cold. So there's not many, I guess, cons here about Zach Ertz outside of his age, but that hasn't really been a factor this year. High-powered offense. Should get the ball at least a decent amount. Should give us 7 to 10 fantasy points this week, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's a lot for the tight end position. Let's move over here to our quick Week 7 recap. We have our starts at the top, our sits at the bottom. Now, at the very bottom, here's my extra play on the week. Tank Bigsby, he's playing a tough New England defense, and you might be inclined to start him because of ETN is out. Again, Tank Bigsby fumbled last week. They still have D'Ernest Johnson in the mix. I just don't see that London game being very high scoring. So again, unless New England blows them out, which I think New England might actually win that game, we're going to sit Tank Bigsby just to err on the side of caution. But that's going to do it here for today's video. If you want a second opinion on your lineup, look, I'm here for you. I'm not perfect, but I'm pretty dang good at what I do. So drop it in the comments. I'll get back to you as quick as I can. Go enjoy some football.